There is nothing more important, save probably sanity, in luthiery than a sharp tool. Now there are several methods. The oil stones or water stones or diamond stones, although the diamond stone isn't a stone, it's impregnated metal. Still, tradition, what can you do? I prefer water stones. They are fairly new. We've had oil stones in this country for many generations. Water stones probably 30 or 40 years. They cut much faster, much finer, and you get the sort of edge that you need. Now, for hard use, you sometimes have to sharpen your plane 3 or 4 times in a session, depending on the wood that you're using. Rock maple will blunt the sharpest of chisels or planes in a matter of minutes. And learning how to sharpen properly is absolutely essential. The process itself is actually very simple. It's the practice and the fine-tuning that can take years. My first 3 or 4 months studying violin making, it seems that all I did was stand at the sink trying to sharpen a chisel, and it was time well spent, however boring it was. We have 3 different grades of water stone. The coarsest I use is 800, then it goes up to 1200, so it's a fairly small jump, and that does most of the sharpening for you. And then I use a very fine 4,000 or 5,000 grit to get a shine, and it's that shine that gives you the razor's edge that you need. Sometimes if you've only just blunted a tool, then you go straight to the 1200, or sometimes the very fine stone. But if you've got a plain blade that you've been using a lot, you go right up to the 1200 and start sharpening. Now you'll see I've got as many fingers as possible on the blade. I've got 2 from that hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on here. I'm holding the blade as stable as I can and as flat as I can on a stone, and I keep the stones as flat as I possibly can as well. Now what I'm doing here is flattening that bottom side right up to the edge, clearing away any gunk that you might have. Now the whole theory behind sharpening is a burr. Basically, you flatten one side, then you flatten the other, and then you flatten that side again, and in the process you're rolling over the finest edge of steel, either way, and you keep on going with finer and finer grits, and eventually that little burr, which is practically invisible, although you can feel it with your thumb or with your finger, eventually that burr will snap away and you're going to have a razor sharp edge. Now, plain blades, despite what most people think, are not square. That edge there has to be curved, like so. Okay, and what that does, when you're using your plane, it means that instead of using a whole 2-inch or 2.5-inch wide piece of steel to cut a massive gouge in your wood, you're using just the tip, so maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch is actually planing away at your wood. And and this gives you much greater control over your joint as you cut it. It's essential to keep the water stones wet while you're using them. Now you'll see what I'm going to do is, as I sharpen the blade, I rock it from side to side, which is the process that takes a lot of time to get used to. And again, I'm holding the blade with as many points, it's like rock climbing. Keep as much contact as you possibly can. And with my thumb I can feel where the burr is going, or where I'm actually managing to sharpen it. I can actually hear when it's cutting right on the edge. Not on this side. But when you're doing this, you've got that sound, which is wrong, and that sound, which means it's literally just carving away the edge of my plane blade. Every now and then you'll see a blunt section, and you can actually just see the finest white line, like the silver lining of a cloud, just right on the edge. I've moved on to the 1200 grit stone, and that's much finer. It sounds finer, and again, it's just about time and effort. I'm rocking it over, and that turns the burr over to the other side. Then I go and I turn it back over again by going on the flat side, and you do that, and you continue doing that until you think you're ready. And that looks to me fairly sharp, but if you look at that, it's still a fairly dull shine. So effectively, while it's sharp and it is shaving, it's shaving and it's taking the hair off, but it's the difference between a week-old razor and a brand new one. I can feel it catching on the hair, and that is not sharp enough. So you move on to your finest stone. Now this should only require just the smallest bit of effort. Again, a different sound. Is shaving perfectly. Now, after all that effort, 10 minutes sharpening time. On a rosewood, it's probably going to stay sharp for 20 minutes use, something like that. And then I'll have to come back at least to the finer stones and hone that edge and get that edge back up. However, the difference in the actual job while you've got a properly sharp tool is incalculable. Chisels are much easier to sharpen than plane blades because they have a perfectly square edge. So that top bit is fine. The principle is exactly the same. Once you've found your edge, and I've got my edge, my hand just knows where to go. Once you've found your edge, and you can hear it, you just keep it perfectly flat and square to the stone. Well, not square, but perfectly flat and at the right angle. And you start sharpening and turning the edge over, turning the burr over. Now for both, there is available a tool called a honing guide, and that is why most people think that plane blades are flat, is because you can't actually put a curve into your plane using a honing guide. It's sort of a wheeled thing which sits on either side of the blade, and you go backwards and forwards and it holds it at that angle. Unfortunately, that crutch just breeds bad habits into people. It doesn't take long to learn what angle to hold your blade at, and if you make a mistake, it doesn't take long to fix it. So if at all possible, throw away your honing guide. Now I use vintage planes and chisels for the very good reason that steel nowadays is very often not the steel they used to use. This is an old Ward chisel, probably 100 years old, and this steel will keep its edge for 10 times longer than most commercially available chisels, unless you are breaking the bank to buy a set. I sit there with the catalogues and I lust after Japanese folded steel chisels, and one this size would probably cost me £400 or more, and there's no point. This I could find for £10 sharp, or in a car boot somewhere, or a charity shop, something like that, £2 in a box. Spend an hour or two honing it and sharpening it and getting it clean, and you've got a chisel that will last you. This will last me the rest of my life, and somebody after me for the rest of their life. And I'm probably going to take maybe 10mm off the length of it over my career, and I plan on having a nice long career. The end result, the perfectly razor sharp chisel. You need to have a mirror's edge. In the end, that's that. If it can cut hair like that, it can definitely help build a guitar.